All right, Jennifer, we are live again. Let me get these tickers off here. Can you believe that it is another Tuesday already?
The weeks are just flying by, and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. It's week 27.
That's right. Week 27, 6 days a week live streaming, 27 straight weeks of building modular. Jennifer's coming up with all this content and everything we do. I mean, we got pages of stuff today, which is a lot of fun. So listen, make sure that you guys hit that like and share button. And also, if you're not following us, please follow us on LinkedIn as well. And also, please go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. Believe it or not, it does help us. You know, we put a lot of time and effort into pulling all this together each week. And knowing that you're out there and helping us grow what we are doing is absolutely awesome. So with that said, Jennifer, why in the world are we talking about hidden costs in modular construction?
Well, here's the deal. In any business, are there really any hidden costs? It's not about hidden costs. It's just about knowing your business and asking the right questions.
Well, yeah, okay. But they're hidden until you know your business. That's the thing, right? Because we're here educating people on modular. So aren't they all hidden costs until you know your business?
Well, here's the thing. On Building Modular, we're welcoming everyone to this community. Maybe you're already building using volumetric modular construction, or maybe you are a traditional site builder using, traditional means, or maybe you're a panelized builder thinking that volumetric modular might be a solution for one of the opportunities that you have. Whatever the case, if you're new to the space or you want to be better in the space, let's learn together. Let's go through and share some pro tips today.
Well, I think that's so. What you're saying is this could be a crossover for any system, panelized, modular, SIPs, right? I mean, concrete. It's all about knowing the who, what, where, and when. It's no different than Henry Mickelberg was saying on the show yesterday. It's just a process, and you got to outline the process.
Right. And today's conversation is actually a pickup from last week's show where we had Alex Berlin from Rochester Homes on the show. Alex. Always a great conversation with Alex where we asked him, Alex, what piece of advice would you give builders, your existing builder base, new builders that you're bringing on? And he said, partner with us, help us understand your business, and we'll help you understand where there might be some opportunities, where there might be some misses, some things that maybe you're not considering. Really leverage that relationship with the partner, because when the builder wins, they'll come back.
They will come back. And also it's that the partnership and the collaboration is so important. We stress it every week on this show, and the collaboration and using the builder as your partner, somebody who is in this to win it with you, and approaching it in that sense versus they are another supplier, I think is what one has to do. It's not even think. I know we've been doing it for years. And when you have that team approach, home run.
Absolutely. And, even if you're in the space and you're choosing to work with a new modular manufacturer, this is a good refresher. Just what questions to ask, what to look for. And it all starts with the plans, right? Your checklists and, where's your soapbox here?
So, yes, Jennifer. So don't worry. I have a banner for it. Checklist and coordination, 100%. Everything from lot inspections all the way through, transportation, the set, all the way through. Checklist. You need to be organized, right? This is not rocket science. It is not, right? But a lot of people try it once. I ain't doing that again. But those that actually give it 2 or 3 attempts typically sit there and finally go, I got it. And that's the big thing that most people need to understand here. So everything new takes an education, and that's why you got us. We're here to educate you, and we're here to help you. So if you are looking to build, this is a good intro for you. So let's do it, Jennifer. What do you think?
Yeah. So again, before we get started, please, tell us where you're tuning in from. Give us a like or a share. And let us know if you have any questions as we get into uncovering the costs associated with volumetric and modular construction.
Absolutely. So let's hop into. Good morning, George. Good morning, Mark. Nice to see you. I see Tom Synergy Steel. And we have some others tuning in here. So Amin, how you doing, Amin? Good to see you. It's been a while since I've seen Amin pop up. So awesome. All right, let's get into this, everyone. I think that we have a slideshow to share. PowerPoint Tuesday is what we should call it, Jen.
I know, seriously.
PowerPoint Tuesday. All right, let's add it in here somehow. Here we go. Let me take the banner off. Okay, so what do you have here, Jennifer?
Yeah, so again, whether you're new to building homes using modular construction or you've already been in the space, the number one thing we encourage you to do is work with your partners, the factory, your installation crew, and your set crew. If these are probably the partners that you haven't worked with in the past, and these are the friends that you really need to make.
Yeah, for sure. So the slide, I'm assuming everybody can read it, but whether you're new to modular home using modular construction or a seasoned professional, be sure to cover all your hard costs. And George Ryman made a comment. We're going to get to that too. To create an accurate budget, working with your trade partners, including the factory installation crew and crane crew, and not to mention your trade partners on site.
100%.
Right. So all of these people, we're gonna high level touch on all this. And this is a great thing because we are working on a class for this stuff. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're having fun putting all this stuff together, sharing it right now. So, all right, Jennifer, with that said, let's move to the next slide. Factory costs, permits, labels, seals, engineering fees, third-party inspection, stamp sets. What's it all mean?
So these are some of the things that may be new to someone who was building on site, right? The permits that you need to pull in advance, the labels, the seals, engineering that happens at the factory. You need to build that into your job budget and your cost estimate. Third-party inspections that happen at the factory. What happens is so much gets checked at the factory, it doesn't happen on site, but there is, there may be a cost associated with that. So be on the lookout for that. And then stamp set, those permit sets. Yep. A lot of times the manufacturers will include this in their pricing. Just double check to make sure it's really there. Well,
there's that, and there's the engineering of those stamp sets, right? Knowing your weight loads for your foundation and all of these things. Sometimes there are additional costs depending on if you're a high wind zone or, an island build like we were seeing Ken Semler recently do. So these things are all very, very important to keep track of. And stamp sets.
100%.
So why with stamp sets, Jim? What in the world of modular, we all try and be speedy and get our stamp sets in for permits. But what happens sometimes?
Somebody makes a change.
Oh, a customer makes a change, and then it becomes a structural change, right? So then there's always that change that you weren't expecting. Sometimes you got to restamp, or you need to just update at the end of the build your final stamp plan. So keep that in mind, or have a clause in there for your customers so they know if they make a change after that stamp set. Pro tip: if they make a change after the stamp set, you are covered and you're not the one eating that change, nor is your factory, because you can't expect them to do this stuff for free.
Absolutely. And that is a really good pro tip. Just account for it, either by telling your clients up front if they make structural changes that result in, an envelope change, that could result in a fee, an additional fee for stamp sets, or build it into your cost. If you know your client base and you know for sure that a change is bound to happen, just build it into your cost, and that way you don't have to deal with it or have the conversation. Most times it's not a lot of money, but just make sure you're covered. And there
Pro tip. That's a new banner for us. Pro tip. When that pro tip goes up, that means pay attention.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, again, this also is assuming that you've done your site plan, you have your survey, that you're not just going to the factory to price something without having all of your ducks in a row. So we're just assuming that you already have the site survey and a lot of information at your fingertips when we're at this point already.
Right. Absolutely. Here's another important thing that Henry Mickelberg said yesterday. The most successful companies are vertically integrated. So whether you're doing single family homes or multifamily homes, right? This is why it's so important to be completely, and I don't know if embed's the right way to say it, with your factory, right? It's super, super important, because if you guys are in step, because I know not everybody's going to own a factory and do this stuff, vertically integrated, but if you guys are in step, in sync, like the band, right? Then
you're aging yourself, really?
I'm old. I'm allowed to be old, right? I don't know, George, am I allowed to be old? I'm old. That's okay. No, it just means I got a lot up here. I probably forgotten more than most people know.
Yes,
I don't know.
But here's the deal with the factory, right? And we see this happen all the time. We have a few local trade, or I should say a few local supply houses where when we walk in there, it's like Norm at Cheers, right? They know your name, they know who you are, they know where you're building, they know your client base. Cultivate that same relationship with your factory. They're great people.
Oh, yeah.
It might be a socially distanced relationship if they're 100 miles away or so, but cultivate that same relationship that you have with the team in your local supply house. It will really serve you well. It
will very much serve you well. So I need to go up here because we have all this stuff set up for the next couple labels here. All right, moving forward, Jennifer, transportation costs, right? So let's talk about this. We have traffic control, we have offsite staging, we have carrier shuttles, storage of modules, driver layover, super wides, bulldozers, toter trucks. All right, let's hit every one of these, right? And let's talk about these. And I think, instead of us staying little tiny people all the time. So let's talk about traffic control in this. Let me get in here.
Yeah, so with this, it's two things. Where are the modules coming from and where are the modules going? And what are the rules, in between the states, the borders that you may need to cross and local jurisdiction. Know the route, right?
100%. You got to know the route, at least from the major highways, because the manufacturers 9 times out of 10 are going to run the rest of the route based on truck routes and what have you, right? But understanding transportation and when you get off where those trucks can fit are critical, super critical. And if you are unsure, pro tip, should we get pro tip now? Pro tip. Factories are delivering everywhere. Call the factory and say, hey, listen, I have a job that we're going to hopefully close and build. If you have a truck in the air, can your driver drive through to just verify, because I'm second guessing myself if I can fit in there. That's all you got to do. And typically 9 times out of 10, unless you're in the Midwest and it's, 1,000 miles, if you're like Tom Coronado and it's an hour to Home Depot and another hour and 15 minutes to Lowe's, they may not go out of their way for you. However, if you live in that kind of country, it's probably wide open too. So either way, pro tip, you can use and ask the factories to drive these routes for you.
Absolutely. And if you have a few of these under your belt, you definitely get to know what these costs are and how to estimate them and how to figure that out without bothering the factory or the site crew or the installation crew, whoever the appropriate trade partner might be. But if this is your first time, second time, even your 5th or 10th time in a new area, it might be your first time in a new area, just don't guess. It's not worth it. No,
it is definitely not worth it. The cost to guess is very, very expensive, and you don't want to be in that situation whatsoever. So I agree with that, Jennifer. Very good, very good. All right, so let's talk about offsite staging and carrier shuttles, because this is the next thing. Here, I'll put it up. Everybody can see one more time. Offsite staging and carrier shuttles is what we're going to talk about right now. And we got a lot of slides today, so we better pick it up, right? Or people are going to get tired of listening to us. All right, so with offsite staging, where do I stage, Jen? How do I find a staging area? I'm in Connecticut. Traffic is horrible on 95. There's very little space unless you're in the western or eastern part of Connecticut. How do I find a staging area?
Well, the first thing you need to do is figure out if you need a staging area. Maybe you don't. So maybe there's, space on the property or an adjacent location, a vacant lot, that you can kind of bring cookies and flowers over to the owners and say, hey, do you mind if I park these carriers here for a while? But if not, definitely Google Earth or Google Maps is your friend, and look for the places that aren't in business on those days. Wide open parking lots. You always talk about churches and
churches. Churches are always willing for a small donation to allow you to park their stuff in their church for the most part, as long as it's not on Sunday. But you're absolutely right. Landscape facilities, depending on the time of year, if it's a winter build, fall build, whatever, off season, their parking lots are not full with customers. So just think a little bit outside the box. As cliche as that sounds, there's a lot of places that you'd really be surprised that are definitely good for working. So, all right. With that said, Jennifer, let's keep moving on here. By the way, that was a pro tip.
Love it.
All right, here we go.
So where are we?
We're full of ourselves is what we are. We got to watch what we're doing here. People are getting tired of listening to us. All right, storage of modules and carriers, driver layovers, So when we talk about storage of modules and or carriers, right, we're really talking about the carriers because we already have a staging area for the modules. Now it's what do you do once you pick those units up, put them on the foundation, you're still stuck with all these carriers.
Right. And sometimes those carriers will go away the same day, depending on, who the builder or who the manufacturer is and what the proximity is and all of that. But other times they do get stacked and they sit for a couple of days.
They do.
So here's another pro tip, things that you need to be careful of. Rainy season, mud season. If those carriers are sitting for a few days, you don't want them to get stuck anywhere. Yeah,
for sure. And very, very much true. So most transportation rules, like when they're shipping the carriers back, they can typically stack them anywhere between 2 and 4 high, depending on the state, and transport them back. So that's where we come over to the layover truck, right? Depending on where these carriers are and where the staging area is, most manufacturers want the staging area within a 2-mile driving distance of the job site. Right. So what is a staging area, Jennifer?
So essentially when, after you've taken the modules off or the modules are parked and installation is happening a few days later, the modules or the carriers need to sit, right? Nobody's doing anything with them. They're just parked there until, the next event is happening, whether it's the installation or the removal of those carriers.
Yeah, 100%. And that is so important to there could be fees associated with this. Right. And that's where the hidden costs come in, right? So when we talk about all of these different things, you may cost you to stage your modules. It may cost you to transport your modules. So let's talk about the layover truck and the transportation. Because if you need a layover, a toter truck to pull it from wherever it's going, there's a cost associated with that. And that's not going to typically be in your upfront number from the manufacturer. Also, what about police escorts? Depending on the size of these modules and where you are, you may or may not be required to either have escort cars or police escort or traffic control on both sides of the road.
Right. And obviously times are very different right now. Think about the time of day when you are transporting and rolling through certain time or certain towns or certain locations. Other things that we've bumped into are noise ordinances that you need to be careful of, if you're rolling through at night.
Yep. And
the other thing is if you're rolling through during working hours, you have to be on the lookout for schools.
Yeah. So I see Greg Ugaldi's and has commented, but Greg, you'll get a kick out of this. So in the state of Connecticut and New York says you can travel up to 11 p.m., right? Or you can travel after. Wait a minute. You can travel super wides at 16-foot, bigger modules up to 11 p.m., but you cannot enter the state of Connecticut until 12:01 a.m. So you're stuck for an hour on the border, and this is going to lead into the noise ordinance, right? Now we have to come in at night with big tractor trailers to the job site, Greenwich, Connecticut, right? And all of a sudden we're backing up our trucks. Beep, beep, beep. There comes the police. Right. We're disturbing the noise ordinance. Like sometimes it's like, what do you do? And what is the state's thinking? But these are some of the things, and they become hidden costs because guess what happens?
Exactly.
Here's your noise ordinance ticket. And those things do come about.
Yeah. So the other thing to think about is, building in some of those costs that you may bump into, inadvertently into the cost of transportation or associate it with whatever line item you think is most important or most appropriate. Because guess what? I don't care if you've done this 100 times. Every job, there is an aha moment where you discover something, a new situation, a new scenario that the next job you're going to build into the budget. So here's another pro tip, if you're doing this for the first time, build in an aha moment to each of your categories, put it into QuickBooks or however you're building your job budget, come up with a dollar amount so that if something does happen, and we've said it before, Murphy always shows up.
Always. I don't like him, but you got to plan for him.
Exactly.
I love it. You're right. So they should call it Murphy will show up.
Allowance.
Murphy will show up. Yeah. So, all right, with that, and then really just a toter truck on site or a bulldozer, a wheeled dozer. If you got to maneuver in a tight area with, modules that are 30, 50, 60 feet long, whatever the case is, or maybe you got a long, windy hill up a mountainside, that's important to know that, a typical truck may not be able to pull it up that dirt road. You might be better with the toter truck. So keep those things in mind, and those are all things that will save you money. All right, Jennifer, moving on. And then after this one, we'll say hi to a few people.
Sounds good.
All right. So here we are. We're crane and installation costs. Don't guess. How many times when we started out did this burn us? Like years ago. How many times? I figured it all out. I had it all figured out. What happened?
Even when you have it all figured out, it changes.
Always.
It 100% changes. And here are some things that could change it as well.
All right.
You're planning this house, and it's got beautiful dormers and you're all set. And you think you got your crane costs under control, but then you discover that those dormers are being shipped loose and there's additional work that needs to be done.
Right.
Or, I don't know how many different things have we bumped into with Cape Cod style homes, especially. There's always something. But regardless of where you're building or what you're building, if you're new to the space, when it comes to crane costs and it comes to the installation crew, review the plans with them.
All right. So pro tips. I love this pro tip stuff. Sometimes I wonder if I even know what I'm talking about, but I listen.
but you do, it's a pro tip. It's official.
It's official. So here's the deal, right? All right. So, hey, we're doing modular. We need a crane. Okay. Do you have a tracking pad? Is there a pad set up for the crane? Are you on a level lot or slope lot? Do you need stone down because it's muddy and it's spring and it's raining, right? These are all the things you need to take count for, because the crane is not coming up and putting in a tracking pad. A crane is not coming up, putting in a pad to set up. So these are all very important things that will cost you overruns if you need them, right? So when you're working with your civil engineer, it's always great if they lay out that space on the site plan where that crane's going to set up. And you can even have them lay out the staging area, especially when you're doing commercial projects. This is super, super important depending on where it is and what you're doing. So yes, I agree. A pro tip would be understanding the crane's one cost, but prepping for that crane can be a completely different cost, and you need to be ready for it.
Absolutely. And then what about crane time? When does the clock start ticking?
Soon as it leaves the driveway. Don't you wish you could get paid as soon as you got in your car and turned it on? As soon as it leaves the yard, it doesn't matter if it sits in 2 hours of traffic. That's your bill. So that's one of the things. And it's the same way on the way home. So when you figure, okay, well, I need 8 hours, I'm going to get 4 modules set, typically you can do that fairly easy. All right, I'm gonna get my crane for 8 hours. That crane's there for 8 hours, but guess what? Now you got 2 hours of overtime because it has an hour getting there and an hour home. Well, that was $1,000 that you didn't account for. And if it's a big crane because of the reach, it could be thousands of dollars in overtime fees, especially if there's going to be toter trucks with it. And what's a toter truck, Jen? I'll tell you.
Tell us, David.
Toter truck carries extra weights and gear for the crane. So depending on the size of the set, typically a commercial set is not happening with a 90-ton, 60-ton, or a 1-ton crane. They're getting up into the 235s, and those 235s need to have additional trucks with them and people. So pro tip, count for that.
Absolutely. So with your installation crew and your set crew, work with your factory, identify who they are. Bring your site plan, bring your, the plans for the house, bring your foundation plans, bring it everything, all of that paperwork, sit down, review with them, whether over a video chat, in person, whatever it might be, but don't guess.
Do not guess. Guessing costs money. All right, let's do a couple quick comments here. We got people tuning in. Marco Willie, yes, he's always promoting BS Friday. Love it, love it, love it. Green Net Zero, right? We're doing the pre-conference launch this Friday with Brett, right? Which is going to be awesome. And Mark Bare Naked Willie. So looking forward to that. Love it. The links are there. So please join us Friday at 1 o'clock Eastern time. So George Ryman from Phoenix is joining us. Other hidden costs could include unexpected material escalations, freight, fuel charges, etc., surcharges. We're going to get into that a little bit later, George. But
you looked ahead.
You
saw our keynote.
You tapped into my system, didn't you? I know. That's what happens. That's what happens. All right. Mark Willie is saying, big fan of third-party inspections, Brett Little, a.k.a. Green Home Institute. All right, Mark, got it. What does that say? Oh, yeah. LinkedIn builds, got it. So absolutely loving it. All right. George Ryman depends on when I ask him about my age. I do have gray hair. You see my beard? I kind of shaved it a little bit today.
Right.
All right, Greg Ugaldi. Are companies able to quote $1 per square foot cost for a home, even a range?
So this is the quintessential question, right? When it comes to building new homes. And, it came up a couple of times last week during Building Systems Week. What are you putting into that home? What are you putting into the grocery bag? The example was toilet paper or lobster tails.
That's right.
So definitely you need to understand what you're building. But Greg, by the time you get down to it and by the time you figure everything out, essentially what you're doing is coming up with a formula so that you as the builder can understand what your cost per square foot is. And
100%.
then you can communicate that to the client however you see fit.
Yeah, that's the most common question, Greg, and absolutely. Everybody asks that of stick builders as well. Well, why can't you give me a stick, a square foot price? Everybody else give me a square. It just doesn't work that way. And I think that's an education thing that we fight all the time, and builders like to throw out square foot numbers. And it's really the worst thing that we can all do, because it does come down to what is in that bag of groceries, right? As Mark really put, what's in it? Is it lobster? Is it toilet paper? And, is it 10 lobsters or is it 1 lobster? So there's all kinds of different scenarios. So great conversation. We should almost have a show just on how should somebody approach telling a client how much something costs.
Well, there's a whole selling series here, right? And I think with construction, and regardless of what type of construction you're utilizing, whatever method of construction, it's the overall value.
Yep.
Is this the best product and process for the client? What's the overall value? Because it's not a question of whether one is more expensive or less expensive. Right. It's just what's important to the client. What are their hot buttons? And how do you present to your client? Because for some people, it's not about money. It's about time.
It is.
For some people, it's not about money. It's about the building envelope. For some people, it's not about money. It's less disturbance on site. So just understand where the value lies, and that's how you present to your client.
100%. I agree. Sorry, Jen, I was looking here. I'm a little confused. All right. So, hey, look, there's Amin. How are you? Doing well, Dave. AIS man. It's good to see him come back. Good to see you. Thank you very much for tuning in today. All right, George, I often do my best avoiding staging and multiple picks in between the manufacturing facility and the job site. All right. So this is interesting. All right. 90% of the time, unless it's a tiny job, maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, George. You're going to have a staging area. These modules are coming down. If we're doing a multifamily, 44 module set, like we just did at MMC, you're not bringing those in one day and setting them in one day. This is a 5, 6, 7, 10 day set period. Even with a single family home, yes, you can move things once, like you said, George, if your job site allows you to stage them there and bring them once, drop them off, set them up, crane sets up, and you never have to move anything. You just set them up in the pick order. However, in my entire years of doing this, I don't think I've ever been so fortunate to have any job that I didn't have to move something around.
Yeah,
personally.
But ideally, if you're new to this, that's where that would be ideal. Is a wide open piece of land. And
somebody in the Midwest may be doing this all day long. George, like I said, but we're in the Northeast in these bigger areas. I don't see that happening.
We've had a couple of jobs where it has been, on the easier side, but then there's the other things that you need to look for, right? Because invariably in the Northeast here, we bump into ledge, we bump into rock, high density areas. There's just so many things you can go through. And this is where checklists and coordination come into play, because every time you bump into one of those one-off situations, add it to your checklist.
100%. That is truly what it is. It's going to be a long checklist, but it's a lot less money to have that checklist.
Absolutely.
For sure. All right, let's do a couple more comments real quick. Yeah, New York City constraints are insane. Yes, they are. But people are building there, right? We've done some work in and around New York, Union City, Jersey City, Long Island. So, I've not really done too much in downtown, but I know that how stringent it is to get things done. But I would think right now would be if they're loosening up on working down there, it might be a good time to do your project, right? Because the less traffic and so forth.
And if Rick Hawkins was here, he would be talking all about the logistics and the planning, because with logistical coordination, things can get done. And lately we've been talking about this, like if we can send people to Mars, we can do this.
Right. Isn't that amazing, right? We can send something into space that travels for, how many years, calculated. They have all the data. I said this to Henry yesterday, right? I know we're getting there. We are getting there. That's what this is all about. All right. So thank you for the comment. Tiffany McCall says, great comparison. And then there's Tom Reddy. Great job on the extra cost. Having an agreed to detailed scope of work will help with what the cost will be and who will be responsible. Yes, 100%, 100%. Oh, and then here we're going to go back to our presentation after we bring in the one and only Judy Donnell. Do you use a specific estimating program, or do you use your own with all the hidden factors you have found, or do you have an automatic price you add to the bottom line? This is a great question, because I would say, Judy, 80% of modular home builders that are just on the single family side probably have their own spreadsheets in a million different places. I'd say the other 20% have moved to an automated system. Now, this has been an issue with our industry. Is there really, up until the last few years, has not been a plug and play for modular. Most of it has all been designed around the site-built world, making it very difficult to compartmentalize what the factory's doing and what you're doing, right? Because the factory's not giving you an inventory list of how many studs they bought, right? They're giving you the square foot price. Here's the base products they use, or I should say a lineal foot price, maybe, depending on the factory. So to answer your question, in today's day and age, if you are not using some sort of programming and software that tracks all this, that tracks the employees, that tracks everything that's happening on your job site, you are going to be losing. Now, if you're just doing one home a year, no big deal. But if you're doing multiple homes a year and you're doing multifamily and commercial work, if you're not, you're probably losing money without knowing you're losing it, because you can't track everything the way you need to.
Yeah, and there are, enterprise retail solutions out there, that are trying to help builders with volumetric construction. And there are some design programs out there, even, BIM, where you get your bill of materials and everything else. But what that doesn't do is help you cost your on-site labor costs.
That's right.
So, Judy, my experience has been with the builders I've spoken to is it's a combination of things. It's a couple of spreadsheets, it's a couple of programs that they use, and they kind of bolt it all together. But essentially what you're doing, and again, from an accounting perspective, however you're building out your job budgets, you can manipulate your job budgets and the categories you use there, and experience and time allows you to put things in the right place so that you don't forget.
100%, and that's coming from the pro right there, because Jennifer, you have built out several systems for us, over the years, and you have been through the gamut of the software out there trying to do different systems, not only for when we were doing it, but for clients as well. So there is some tricks of the trade to it, and there are more programs coming online that help with this.
Absolutely. Great question, Judy. Thank you.
All right. Judy Donnell in the house. I almost love saying that, right?
I know.
Cool.
So this is a perfect point, Judy, of where those systems will really help you, because you need to figure out not just what the cost of those items are, but where are the taxes applied? Are there material surcharges? Are there fuel surcharges?
That's right.
And are there any travel premiums? And this is where those systems really help you, so that you apply these in the appropriate places. It's so unfortunate. I've seen builders build out estimates and then forget to apply tax to the appropriate places based on where they were building. They built in across state lines, and either they weren't applying the tax or they had the wrong tax rate in there. And when you're talking about big numbers, that can hurt. So, this is definitely a pro tip. Understand where you need to apply the taxes. Understand from your factory, especially now, how often those material surcharges come, and do they ever really go away, or do they get rolled into the cost? So, this is, George, what you were alluding to earlier. This is the devil in the details.
That's
and
right.
This is true for any builder, not just offsite construction, not just volumetric. This is true for anybody.
Yeah. Well, and so Greg Ugaldi, actually, we were talking about this where they're working on actually, can't remember the name, where they're building it into the contract to protect the builders and homeowners from these escalation clauses. Thank you. And these are things that you have to have in your contract as well. When you are negotiating, if you're a builder or a developer and you're negotiating terms with the modular manufacturer, it's the same thing. You just don't sign what they give you. You need to look through it. You need to know what it is, because there's demurrage charges. There's escalation clauses. I know in most manufacturers' contracts now. And the thing is, a lot of these manufacturers buy in bulk.
Right.
That's a plus for you. Make sure you lock in a certain time frame with your job before that escalation clause kicks in, right? So you have to look at that, but they're not going to hold it forever. You can't expect them to. If you have a job that you say, hey, it's going to deliver in 3 months, and all of a sudden 6 months goes by and there's been price increase, well, I mean, that's not fair to the manufacturer either. So, but you can work some things out there that are mutually beneficial for both.
Right. And if you understand, yes, definitely. If you understand what the rules of engagement are with your manufacturer and your crews, your trade partners across the board, if you know what the rules of engagement are, if you understand the escalation clauses, then you can figure out how you present that to your client so that you're able to adjust as needed with your client. Talk about it in advance, know it in advance, so that way it's not a surprise later on.
100%. 100%. All right, we got to get moving, Jennifer. It's 40 minutes. Let's get moving. Get moving. We like talking a lot, don't we? All right, supervision, hidden cost and delivery, installation, on-site work. I can go on and on and on about this, right? We talked already about the delivery, right? And what those issues could be. But even from the staging area to the job site, there are issues. Right? Detours happen that you didn't know was going to happen, or accidents or traffic.
Right.
That crane sitting there, tick, 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 tick. He's just in there playing Pokemon or whatever until we show up.
And know your plan. Again, if you're delivering late at night, you will need somebody at your team there to supervise and receive, the modules and adjust that price accordingly, because now you're paying your crew overtime or, a different pay rate if they're working from midnight till 4 a.m. as opposed to a normal workday. Maybe you have to be there late on a Sunday night. Is it double time? Is it overtime? Make sure that you're calculating your supervision numbers correctly. And putting enough time in there.
Absolutely. So if you use a simple program like Builder Trend or any of these, just simple, we're talking simple stuff. We're not even getting into the big software for the commercial. Everybody should be tracking their time. And what you do is you take this data and you use this data to improve your efficiencies over time, depending on the scopes of work in the home, right? We live and breathe this, everybody's part of the team. So the hidden cost is delivery. It is supervision. It is, what happened with Murphy? There's extra time with Murphy when he shows up, right? There's all of these things, and you can start fine tuning what those timelines are. And because even with modular, you do have crews, you got sheetrock, you got HVAC, electrical, plumbing, excavation. Start tracking the time. Know what that time is costing you in that speed, because every day is money in your pocket that you can save. Every day you can save is money in your pocket.
Absolutely. Yep. And, again, this is where you want to build in some of those aha moments and some of those learning curves for sure. Build that into your budget so you don't get caught off guard. Yeah,
100%. 100%. All right, here we go. So now we're looking at permits and engineering, Jennifer. Permits and engineering, foundation and locally built structures. So we talked about plan engineering, right? We talked about third party, all of the fun stuff that comes with that. Now we're not talking about that. We're talking about the hiccups that are on site.
Exactly. So when you're building out your estimate, a lot of what we've seen builders do in the past is they work with the invoice they receive from the manufacturer, and they think about the site work, the local site work that needs to be done, garages, porches, decks, whatever. And again, this is in regard to residential modular construction. Commercial is definitely different. But they see the permits and the engineering on the manufacturer's invoice.
That's right.
But just make sure you understand that that doesn't include the foundation or anything not related to the house that's actually coming from the factory.
If it is not a code prescriptive build, right? You don't need engineered plans for all foundations, especially in Connecticut, as long as the foundation falls within the scope of the prescriptive code. All right. However, we are coastal, and a lot of people are coastal, or you're on water, or you're building on the side of a mountain, right? Then you need engineered plans. You need the weight loads. You need to understand your V zones and wind zones and flood zones and everything else that comes with it. These are hidden costs that the manufacturer is not covering for you. So you say, hey, Mr. Manufacturer, I'm a first-time builder. Okay, great. Do you have a foundation plan? Yeah, we'll give you a foundation plan. Months down the road, here you go to get your building permit, and they say, oh, you need an engineered plan for this. So these are the things that are going to happen to you. And they're not the ones doing it. So you need to understand all of those different things. So with that, and also, depending on what the local code officials want you to do as well, depending on the zones you're in, you need to start having meetings with the local code officials, especially when you're in an area that is not a prescriptive build. It's so important because the rules are changing all the time. And as we all know, they all have their own idea on what they want.
Yeah. And again, this goes back to having all of the documents you need to create an accurate cost estimate and build an accurate job budget for your clients. You have to make sure that you don't put the cart before the horse. You have the site survey, you have the information that you need before you start committing to these numbers. And that's true, again, of any building system.
Yeah, it really, truly is. All right, we're moving on, Jennifer, because we're running out of some time here. So we're going to get into, did I do this one already? Let's see. Here we go. All right. Local labor and material. Know how much finished work is required. Each factory is different. Your specifications may be different. Go ahead.
Yeah, well,
I know you got a lot
Tom
of this.
Redding was, this is kind of what he was talking about is understand what those detailed scopes of work are, where one begins and the other one ends, to make sure that there's no holes. And if your factory builds to a certain specification, but you're requiring something different, just, make sure you're dotting all your I's and crossing all of your T's, because then you're putting yourself into a new situation with the factory.
You are. So, prime examples of what's being done, what's not being done. You got a door on a mate line. Are you putting it in? The set crew putting it in? Is the factory putting it in? Right? Mate line where the units come together. Maybe there's a door and a header needs to go in right there. So there's all kinds of variables depending on the set. Depending on how you're doing your mechanicals, forced air system, is there going to be a chase? Is there going to be these different things in your home? Or you're using mini splits, baseboard heat, whatever the case is. Every house or every project, PPAC units in hotels, they all have a different scope of work. You need to really understand what those scopes of work are per project, per factory. So if it's step and repeat, and you're a multifamily person and you're, well, then it's one time over. If you're a custom home builder or a custom one-off commercial builder, you got to do the process over and over again. You need to sit there with your colored markers and pens and go through each plan, either on paper or online, highlighting each wall to make sure you account for everything. And when you do, it makes it easy to control your budget.
It definitely does. But you know what? I think we skipped a slide, Dave. We might have to go back because this is another thing.
I didn't skip nothing.
Hold on. Oh.
Supervision, delivery, permits and engineering.
I know.
Local labor and material.
I'm out of order. Let's go to the next one. I'm not sure where it went. Oh, you know what? It's me. My keynote is missing a slide. Here's what we need to talk about is local structural requirements and foundation attachments. This is something, again, for people who are new into the space. How are you attaching those modules to the foundation? Right.
So again, depending on the factory is going to provide weight loads and what the clips are for prescriptive builds, right? Depending if you are doing a local, where you have to have a local structural engineer do your calculations for you. You got to follow the plans. You got to look at each one of those clips. A lot of coastal areas now require stainless steel, right? Or galvanized. A lot of times you got to make custom plates for some of these if you're building on beams, right, on top of piers. So with that said, there is a lot more detail to look at and a checklist to go through when you're building, in a coastal area or a hurricane or earthquake area. So you got to pay attention to all those things.
Right. So things like lolly columns and basement stairs, that's no different again for any building system that you're choosing, but how you're attaching those modules to the foundation. Right. Who's doing that work? Who's
supplying the lolly columns?
Right. Where are those materials? Whose scope of work are they on?
That's right.
Whose job is it? When you think about how the module is attached, that's just an area that people new to the space need to be on the lookout for.
100%. Let's just see here. I see 2 comments in there. Is there anything we got to reach out to before we keep going here? Oh, we got Joel Hutchins joined us today. Cool. And Troy Eichen. What's happening, Troy? Excellent point, guys. Love it. Good seeing you, Troy. Love it. Even Tom Reddy said, great point. Lock-in pricing. We are 5 months out locking in steel. It's a very true thing. If you work with the right people, they're willing to work with you and do what they need to do. 100%. All right, let's keep going down the road here, Jennifer. We're at 48 minutes. All right, so we were on permits, foundations. You said we're skipping over local labor material. How much is the finish required? We already done this. Each factory is different, so we need to pay attention to that. Local labor and material. So again, who's supplying the siding? Does it come with the house? Is it James Hardy? Is it cedar? It doesn't matter. What are you doing, right? Is it metal seamed roofing, or is it 30-year, 40-year, 50-year asphalt roof? All of these things. Who's doing it and what? Is the set crew doing it, or do you have somebody locally coming in? Porches, patios, decks. I mean, we could go on and on and on and on and on.
Right.
Appliances.
Absolutely. And this is where defining words really comes into play, because I've heard it a million times where one crew will say, we'll make sure it's weather tight. What does that mean?
Yes.
Well, what does that even mean?
Well, yes. So weather tight to some is different than to others, right? So weather tight typically with a factory means they're gonna or a set crew means that they're gonna I hate to say it, half-ass some Tyvek or house wrap on the house and just overlap it, right? They're not really going to get up in there and underneath the eaves and really do everything properly, fix all the holes that were put in when they were nailing it on or ripping it down for the cover. So yeah, you really have to know what your scope of work is, what you are comfortable with when you're using, house barriers and so forth for the air barriers and moisture wicking material. You need to know all of this stuff on what falls in your scope of work. And then you need to make sure that whoever set crew you're using or factory is doing it to your standard.
Right. And, really in the beginning, you're trying to do an installation all in one day. You're trying not to carry over into a second day or possibly a third day. And obviously you never want to carry over on a weekend or a holiday, but these things do happen. So again, when you're thinking about that Murphy's Law line item, think about what might happen if weather comes into play, or if traffic control, something happens and the modules are delayed, the crane is delayed. We've seen that happen. We've seen things where we didn't plan for a tracking pad and now we need it. That delays everything. So when you're thinking about weather tight, again, just make sure you're clearly defining what that means, who's responsible, and are we talking about tarps or Tyvek? Hopefully an even better system.
Garbage bags.
But what does that really mean? Don't assume.
Definitely don't assume. Assumptions cost money. All right, Jen, moving forward here. Local labor materials. Some other examples are, flue enclosures, fireplace, interior trim out, paint, flooring, tile. Is your trim nailed home for your baseboard, or are you doing hardwood floors locally or bamboo or whatever locally? Do you have those just tacked in place? These are all finished costs that you have to do on site. Maybe some of you have it up 3 1/4 inches. You already figured most of it out, but you still got to finish where the mate walls are. All of this is important. And then the big one too is who's painting. Customers always ask, who's doing the finish paint? Most factories are doing what? Prime, 2 coats, maybe 1 coat, and I think the NAHB standard, like on the rule is, you shouldn't paint or do anything in your house for like the first 6 months or 12 months. I can't remember what it is because of settling issues, and all the paint now has the elastic. I can't remember what the heck the name is, right? So it's hard to sand out. So using a painting, and if you get any settling, and you do get some settling in modular, just like anything else, not nearly as much as a site built home. These are all things to take into account.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I think we might have to have part 2 of this hidden cost episode, Dave, because we haven't even touched on mechanicals yet. We're still talking about site work and prep. And before we leave, before we decide what we're going to do, one thing that you definitely need to make sure of is with those fireplaces and with those flue enclosures, what needs to happen and who's doing that work. Same thing with blower door tests. Who's doing the work? When is it happening? Are you building it into your budget? These are two things that, again, I've seen builders just not really account for to the full cost. And most certainly didn't bake in any aha moments. So just be on the lookout for that, especially if your fireplace is crossing a main line.
Yeah, 100%. And also just that the factory is doing the fireplace even, maybe it's not a full chimney. Maybe it's just a direct vent with a shed roof out the side. How many of you out there, if you're a modular builder and you're watching this, has had the gas fireplace put in, shed roof out the side, and the customer's living there and they're like, I just feel the cold air coming in through there. I feel the cold air coming in through there. Tell me, I'd like to know who out there has had that happen. I've had it happen over time and you learn, but there's a cost there. And I think that with that cost, one needs to understand that the factory doesn't do everything. You have to get in there and make sure the insulation and the ceiling and everything is done right. Don't assume that the factory, just because they're putting in the fireplace, is getting that box completely finished.
Yeah, definitely. Insulation is another one. Who's doing it? When is it being done?
Yeah.
And even with soundproofing within the house, who's doing it? When is it being done? And are you doing it? So, we've covered a lot today. What do you think if we push mechanicals into the next show?
I'm just looking. You're right. Man, Jen, you talk too much. Right? All right. Yeah. So I think because we have utility work, we have mechanical work, we got finished button up work, right? I think we're going to have an episode 2 on this because that really gets into a whole lot of ifs and doubts and ups and downs and bumps when you start getting into mechanicals and the unknowns with utility companies as well.
Right.
So I agree. So we were looking at, is that what you want me to put up there? That pro tip? Yeah. So this will be the last slide for today, and we'll let you guys go back to earning money. So pro tip, thorough plan review with the factory, with your internal team, with all of your trade partners. Now, this is super, super important. So if you're out there and you're new to this whole modular thing, having plan reviews internally and then including your manufacturing facility to have their team join you and spend the hours going through the plan together before it hits the manufacturing line. It will save you tons. I don't know how many of you out there, all of a sudden decide, oh, I'm going to have a project meeting before we start this job. And all the trades show up and they sit down at the table. And next thing you know, it's 3 hours later and they're all like, well, we can't do that. We have to do this. And the problem solving happens before you even get on site. And that is a lot cheaper than when you were on site.
Yeah, bump into it on paper before you bump into it on site. It is definitely a better way to go. And there's so many programs out there now that can help you do that as well. But meet with your teams, review all of the documents, the site plan, the house plans, the foundation plans. How is it all coming together?
Yeah.
Because you, as the builder, at the end of the day, are responsible, to your client. But these are your partners. They want you to win because they want you to hire them again.
Right. And guess what? First time success is easy to achieve with modular construction. You like the clap and the thumbs up?
I do.
So speaking of thumbs up, hit that like button for us right now if you don't mind. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you don't follow, please follow DaveCooper.live and JenniferCooper.live. So we really do appreciate everyone's support for sure. Don't we? Tell them, Jen.
No, we definitely do. And again, our goal is to build a community that is inclusive and diverse and enable others to have first-time success with building modular and ongoing success with building modular. Because let's finish on our last slide.
Oh, we're going there?
This is definitely the pro tip, right?
Oh, do I not have it? Hold on.
Do we not have it?
There it is. Sorry, I had a lot of things. Precision plus performance equals profitability. And that is our goal, is to make sure that you are successful in modular construction, whether it's commercial, multifamily, residential. Doesn't matter to us. The process is the same. So,
the proof is in the pro forma.
The proof is in there's a shirt. There's a shirt. All right, everybody. Jennifer, take us out today.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week for Building Modular, 1 p.m. Eastern every Tuesday. And tomorrow, don't forget about Product Spotlight tomorrow.
Yes.
1 p.m. We have some great folks joining us tomorrow.
We do have great folks. We have B. Marco is going to be in the house, and we have Nudo is going to be in the house. B. Marco Structures and Nudo. And we're going to talk about the project they did with COVID-19, the Liberty Project in Georgia. And then we're also going to talk about the other things that Nudo and B. Marco are doing. And B. Marco, guess what? If you're listening up, they're not only doing container homes, they're doing steel construction, and now they're moving into wood-based construction. So they are growing. So tomorrow is going to be a lot of fun. And Thursday, we got Jody Varmas on. Jody Varmas, right? From Base Board, Do Good, Make Money. Her book is out, or Make Money, Do Good. Her new book is out. And she's also the head of Snowplow Construction. Yeah.
So stay tuned this week and the upcoming weeks, because we're excited to bring you new conversations, new ideas, and new things that are happening out there.
And next week we will be in Austin, Texas.
Oh my gosh.
Austin, Texas. And we're going to be at some factories and some facilities, and I'm not going to tell you what it is just yet.
Aww.
I do know though.
Listen, everybody.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, and see you tomorrow.
Tomorrow, 1 o'clock Eastern time. We'll see you. Thanks everyone for joining. Bye now.